Part 48. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 471. Boss. Li Qing played with the jade beads in his hand and looked at John and Arthur in front of him. How's the hotel going lately? Are there any difficulties? When leaving Gotham, Li Qing asked them to be responsible for setting up the hotel's killer business. It has been so long, but I don't know if it has had any effect. Boss, now the hotel's killer structure has been basically completed. Except for some details that need to be improved, it will soon be promoted everywhere. John said with a smile. John and Arthur took advantage of the mature system of the Continental Hotel and added some of their own ideas, such as incorporating the broker's fake ID manufacturing, single-line contact mechanism, etc. Making the entire New World killer business more comprehensive and detailed, it can be said to be version 2.0 of Continental Hotel. Through the two people's narration, Li Qing basically understood the specific situation. Yes, I have worked hard during this period. I feel relieved to leave the killer business to you two. In fact, John and Arthur have some differences in their acting styles. Arthur plans before making a decision, studies everything thoroughly, and finds a way out before taking action. John, on the other hand, has strong execution ability and is resolute in his actions, but he is not as good as Arthur in terms of details. Li Qing asked the two of them to participate in this operation together for this reason. He did not want his two generals to be lost in the Middle East. Ahem, there is a task that needs you two to complete together. Li Qing cleared his throat and said solemnly. John and Arthur became serious at the same time. Boss, please give me orders. Let me explain first that this mission is not a must-kill mission. You can give up the mission if you can't do anything about it. I don't want anything to happen to you two because of this mission. Li Qing looked into their eyes seriously. John and Arthur also felt the boss's gaze, and felt a little moved in their hearts. After all, everyone wanted to follow such a big boss. Protect your shortcomings and cherish the lives of your subordinates, this is more important than anything else. Don't worry, boss, if the mission is too difficult, we will evacuate in time, Arthur replied hoarsely. Don't worry, boss, John on the side agreed. Well, my mission this time is to find an opportunity to kill Samu from the Barren Kingdom in the Middle East. He is the legendary elder. Li Qing took a puff of cigarette, smoke came out of his nostrils, and the lingering smoke surrounded his face, making it difficult to see the expression on his face. Although John and Arthur were surprised, they didn't show it. Fortunately, Arthur is a lone wolf killer, and John, as a former killer from the Continental Hotel, certainly knows that there is a mysterious elder above the high table. He did not expect that Samu was the legendary elder, but looking back, it made sense. Only the head of a country could be an elder. I just don't know the identities of the other elders or whether they are the same. Yes, boss. John and Arthur did not stay when they received the mission. After all, the boss did not give them much time. Regardless of success or failure, they required action within a month. The two people walked out of the villa and began to discuss countermeasures. John, we need to collect information about Samu first, and then formulate a strict plan, Arthur suggested. John also knew the danger of this mission. It was very difficult to assassinate the head of state of a country. Even if the assassination was successful, he might not be able to escape. They need to calculate every step carefully, so that the success rate will be higher. After all, the bodyguard next to Samu is no worse than a top killer. In addition, the other party is familiar with the terrain, so there are many aspects to consider. The two of them rushed to the Middle East without stopping, but they did not go directly to the Barren country, but to the Goat country first. At Kabu Airport, the strong wind brought the sand and gravel hitting the glass, making a crisp pop sound. The Goat country is very windy and sandy all year round. Hey, John, Arthur, you're late, Yuri shouted wearing sunglasses outside Kabu airport. Several people are under Li Qing, and they often communicate with each other, and they are all familiar with each other. Yuri received orders from Li Qing and has been discussing orders in the Goat Kingdom. Yesterday, he received news that John and Arthur were coming, and was waiting at Kabu airport early. Hey, Yuri, Arthur waved to the wind to say hello, but he didn't expect to be blocked by the wind and sand. John is smart enough to smile without showing his teeth. But the feeling of the wind and sand hitting my face was a bit painful. Haha. Yuri quickly welcomed the two of them into the car, and John and Arthur let out a sigh of relief. The two come here often from the Middle East, but the Goat Country is more windy and sandy than other places. Bah. The three of them patted the gravel on their bodies. This ghost place is really not for humans. It's windy and sandy, John said with a smile. Haha, once you get used to it, that's all. It's okay. Beauties are quite distinctive. Yuri was a little happy. As a representative these days, Yuri is treated very well here and basically gets everything he needs. The pro-American forces treat him like a grandfather. Why did you two suddenly think of me this time? Is there something wrong? Yuri asked curiously. John and Arthur looked at each other. The boss probably didn't tell Yuri, and they naturally wouldn't reveal it. Well, boss's mission. Arthur pointed to the sky. Yuri immediately stopped asking any more questions. He knew that the boss wanted him to know and had already told him. The reason why John and Arthur chose to settle in the Goat Country was because they did not want to leave records in the barren country. Otherwise, it would be easy to find their identity information, and their Western appearance would make it difficult to conduct an investigation in the country of Baron. Directly through your own channels, let your contacts come to the Goat Country to meet up. Let's go, my friends. Let me take care of you. Yuri smiled. John and Arthur looked at each other and subconsciously looked at the dust on their bodies to see if they needed to be washed away. After a few people arrived at the 5-star hotel, they took a good bath and began to taste the traditional dishes of the Goat Country under the guidance of Yuri. Goat Country really doesn't have a bad name for it. Most of the food is related to goat meat, and some dishes are very similar to those in the border areas of China. There are mutton fried dumplings, naan, and hand-picked rice, but they are slightly different from those in the frontier. The dishes in the frontier are indispensable for Piazzi. The dishes here in the Goat Country are more or less filled with dried mint, raisins, etc., which give them a unique taste. Yuri, how are you doing here? John swallowed the food in his mouth and asked in a deep voice. Yuri knew that he was talking about the situation in the Goat Country. The storm is about to come, and here. Yuri just shook his head without finishing. A war was inevitable. As a beautiful Chinese, he could feel the deployment of his country. Now the pro-American forces are slowly gathering, just waiting for the orders to arrive. A riot or revolution will break out, and by then everything here will be in ruins. As an arms dealer, he knows that once the war starts, he and others will make money faster than the money printing machine. But the fate of the locals will be completely changed. Well, once the matter here is settled, leave immediately, Arthur advised. Yes, boss has arranged everything. Yuri smiled. Li Qing has already contacted Li Qing. As soon as the order arrives, he will immediately ask Yuri to leave with the cargo plane without any delay. The war started, Yuri landed here, and no one dared to guarantee his life safety. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 472. The contact Arthur found soon arrived at Kabu, the capital of the Goat Country. As a lone wolf, Arthur's path was indeed wilder than John. The contact wearing a white turban had a dark face and a thin figure, but the fierce light flashing in his eyes from time to time made ordinary people shudder. He looked like a ruthless person. Abdullah, my friend, long time no see, Arthur saw the contact standing in front of the door and happily went forward to hug him. The contact named Abdullah also smiled and hugged Arthur. "Brother, I rushed here as soon as I received your message. I didn't expect you to be earlier than me." Abdullah patted Arthur on the back. "Come, let me introduce you to my friend John, John Wick." Arthur emphasized the latter name. Abdullah's face flashed with surprise. "Night Demon John Wick, I have heard of you." He stretched out his hand and shook hands with John. "Hello, Abdullah. Night Demon is still very famous in the killer circle. Some people have not seen John, but they must have heard of his name." After the greetings, Abdullah took out a thick stack of documents from his suitcase and put it on the table. "This mission is very difficult." Abdullah patted the stack of documents on the table. When Abdullah heard Arthur's words, he almost popped his eyes out. He has been in the Middle East for so many years, and there have been many assassinations of heads of state, but most of them are against small countries. He dared not even think about the country of Baron. Samu is a dictator. In order to protect himself, he even formed a Republican Guard, with a number of tens of thousands of people. And the 150 elites among them are closely protecting Samu. In the assassinations that have been experienced before, no one can break through this line of defense. In addition to the regiment attack, he can't think of any way to break through this line of defense. Moreover, Samu carries an alarm with him at all times. Once the alarm is pressed, the Republican Guard will arrive within 10 minutes. "It is very difficult," Abdullah repeated. John and Arthur picked up the information on the table and kept flipping through it. Their expressions became more and more serious, and their brows became more and more furrowed. "These are not all the information. There should be other deployments, but I can only get these with my ability." Abdullah shook his head regretfully. If he could get more confidential information, the success rate of the mission would be higher. Half an hour later, John and Arthur put down the information in their hands at the same time and looked at each other. "Not enough people. Mercenaries," they said at the same time. They both realized that this mission could not be completed by 2 people, and more people were needed. "Transfer people from Southeast Asia." John was silent for a while, and then said, "It's better not to use our own people for this matter. It's too easy to be caught. Besides, the target is too big." Arthur pondered for a while. New World's own special forces are basically Asian faces. So many Asian faces appearing in the Middle East are hard not to attract people's attention. Especially in a dictatorship like Baron, Samu will definitely receive the news as soon as possible, and then he will have no chance to carry out assassination. "The Expendables," John looked at Arthur and blurted out. Arthur nodded. The Expendables is a well-known mercenary organization in the United States. As long as the money is in place, they dare to take any task. They have also assassinated the dictator of a small country in South America. It is a mercenary organization composed of retired soldiers, boxers, and killers. The Expendables organization once invited Arthur, but he refused. He didn't want to become a hyena who kills people for money. "I have contacted them. If there is no accident, I think they should take over this mission." Arthur pointed to the photo of Samu in his hand. John nodded. "The success rate will be much higher if he acts with the Expendables." Arthur picked up the phone and started to contact Barney Ross, the head of the Expendables. John was not idle and continued to study the information on hand. He picked up a document and suddenly a photo fell out of the document. John picked up the photo and looked at it carefully. This person seemed a little familiar. Abdullah heard John's question and looked at the photo. This is the former president of Java, Shuha, who applied for political asylum in Baron. It seems that he has something to do with Samu, so his men also added him in." When John heard the word Shuha, his eyes lit up. He knew from Crow that Shuha had escaped before the establishment of the autonomous region, and Crow and his men had been looking for him for a long time but couldn't find him. I didn't expect to see him here. It was really a big pie falling from the sky. Even if this mission failed, as long as Shuha was solved, it would not be in vain. At this time, Arthur had just finished his phone call. John raised his eyebrows and smiled, raised the photo in his hand, and told Arthur the information of this person. Haha, just solved it together. It is difficult to assassinate Samu, but it is too easy to assassinate Shuha. One of John and Arthur can solve it without any effort. It's just that he can't be shot. If he attracts Samu's attention, it will affect the subsequent plans. The death squad will arrive in 2 days. They have their own channels to Barren country, and we will meet directly in Bog. We will leave directly with Abdullah tomorrow. Abdullah's purpose was to bring them to Bog quietly. The Goat country and the Barren country do not border each other, and Persia is in between. Abdullah used his connections to get a small plane, which could reach Bog in 4 hours at most. At 10 o'clock the next morning, John and Arthur had arrived in Bog, the capital of the Barren country. The streets of Bog were crowded with people, and the women were all wearing beautiful clothes, which were completely different from the later costumes of wearing headscarves and veils. But Arthur could not see any smiles on the faces of the pedestrians. Some of them had frowns and sad faces. There was a depressing, decadent atmosphere everywhere, and only the children playing carefree in the alleys brought a little vitality to the city. The failure of the 2 wars caused the economy of this country, which should have been rich, to regress, and even the foreign debts owed could not be repaid in a short time. Let's go to the hotel first," Abdullah whispered while carrying his luggage. Some pedestrians around noticed the 2 Western faces, but they just looked at them curiously. After all, there are quite a few foreigners living in Bog. Abdullah specially found a hotel not far from Shuha's residence, and it was on the 6th floor, with the window facing his residence. John could see the figure in the residence without even a telescope, and sneered, "Hee, it seems that this person is also very afraid of death. He has hired a lot of bodyguards. He is quite smart. If he doesn't hire bodyguards, he probably won't dare to close his eyes when he sleeps. Don't worry, I will let him die silently." Arthur opened the suitcase, which contained various potions. He was much more experienced in silent assassinations than John. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 473. In the pavilion in the yard, Shuha sat on a rocking chair, and there were various fruits and even iced watermelon on the table next to him. But Shuha was not satisfied with this kind of life at all. He just wanted to have a good sleep. Shuha squinted his eyes and lay on the rocking chair. He was now confused about day and night. Since he came to Barren, he has been keeping his eyes open at night and sleeping during the day. Only in this way can he sleep peacefully. He has been on guard against assassinations in the New World, although his good friend Samu promised to protect him all the time. But the psychological effect made him unable to sleep at night. As soon as he closed his eyes at night, he felt that Li Qing, the devil, was standing by his bed. He could even hear the faint breathing sound. No, not only Li Qing, he also dreamed of the many Chinese he killed, as if their wronged souls had been haunting him. Shuha, who had just closed his eyes, was awakened by a nightmare again. David, where are you?" Shuha shouted loudly to his bodyguard captain. The bodyguard named David came over slowly. They were used to the situation and felt tired of it. But there was no way. It was making money, not bad. "Boss." Shuha panted loudly. He barely calmed down when he saw David. "David, pass me the asthma spray." Since he came to Barren, he has suffered from severe asthma, which may be related to the climate here. In addition, as he grows older, Shuha can no longer do without antihypertensive drugs. Once his emotions fluctuate, his blood pressure will soar. Only antihypertensive drugs can barely suppress it. Shuha took the medicine from David, put it in his mouth, and pressed it twice. Huh! Shuha breathed a sigh of relief, shook the asthma spray, and there was no more inside, so he threw it into the trash can. Then he rubbed his eyes and picked up the information on the table to read it. He gave most of the assets transferred from Java to Samu, and then he got Samu's protection. At the same time, he also asked Samu to pay close attention to the information of the New World and notify him as soon as there was any news. There are many people who want to kill him now, but few have the ability to do it. Li Qing is one of them. So he has to keep track of the New World's movements at any time, and immediately move to a hiding place if there is any situation. Humph, this Li Qing is getting more and more rampant. When Shuha saw the news of the establishment of New World hotels in various parts of Southeast Asia, he couldn't help but snorted coldly. In the past few years, he watched the power of the New World grow stronger and stronger, and his sense of crisis became more and more serious. He successively increased the number of bodyguards, and even spent a lot of money to find several elites in Samu's Republican Guard. I have offended so many people, and I will die sooner or later, Shuha said angrily. The better Li Qing is, the more uncomfortable he is. His resignation is directly related to Li Qing. If it weren't for Li Qing, Shuha would not have ended up like this. After flipping through the information, Shuha threw the information aside, feeling a little sleepy. He yawned and continued to squint his eyes. The night fell, and the curtains in Arthur and John's room were tightly drawn, leaving only a gap. Arthur was watching the movements in Shuha's yard through the gap. John, this guy really has his day and night reversed. He doesn't sleep so late. Arthur looked at his watch. It was already 4 o'clock in the morning, and Shuha's room was still lit. Could he sleep with the lights on? John asked. Arthur shook his head. During the day, he has been sleeping in the pavilion. If he was just taking a nap, it would not be possible for that long. John frowned when he heard this. If this was the case, it would be difficult to do it. After the two people observed, the bodyguards around Shuha took turns to protect him 24 hours a day, and there was an obvious alarm device in the yard. It was indeed difficult to assassinate Shuha without alerting the bodyguards. It was not until about 6 o'clock in the morning that Shuha's servants threw the garbage on the roadside with sleepy eyes, which attracted Arthur's attention. After Arthur disguised himself, he took the garbage from Shuha's house back to the hotel room and put it in the bathroom. Come on, John, let me see if I can find some useful information. Arthur handed a pair of disposable gloves to John. The two put on masks and disposable gloves and kept searching in the garbage. There were mostly kitchen waste, such as vegetable leaves and leftovers. Look at these, there should be more than a dozen people. John looked carefully and said his guess. Arthur nodded and said with certainty, to be precise, there should be 18 people. After speaking, he raised the note in his hand. John took the note. It was an order from a restaurant, and it clearly said 18 copies. Okay, you win. John threw the note and smiled. Look, John, I found something good again. Arthur picked up the empty spray bottle. John took the bottle and saw Ismasol written on it. He knew it was a brand of asthma spray made in China. Asthma. Arthur nodded. As an assassination expert, Arthur knew how to kill an asthma patient silently. The two carefully searched the garbage again and found the packaging box of antihypertensive drugs. At this time, a vague plan emerged in Arthur's mind. He immediately stood in front of the window and carefully observed Shuha's house through the telescope. He stared at the vent of the central air conditioner and smiled. He found a way to kill Shuha. However, the most important step was to deal with the asthma spray in his hand. Given the current situation, it was not easy to sneak in and replace the asthma spray. Fortunately, The asthma spray was used up now. If there was no stock, Shuha would definitely ask his bodyguard to buy it. That would be the time for him to take action. Arthur went to a nearby pharmacy without hesitation to inquire and learned that this brand of asthma spray was imported and only one pharmacy in Bag sold it. He asked his contact Abdullah to go to that pharmacy and buy all the asthma sprays of this brand. Then he fiddled with it in the hotel room for most of the day. John looked at Arthur, who was skilled in preparing medicines, and admired him very much. He only knew how to make some simple bombs and the like. Knowledge-oriented things like this were not within his familiar range. Who the hell wants to be a killer and become a chemist? Shouldn't he practice shooting and fighting? Did Arthur click on the wrong skill tree? After preparing the medicine, Arthur mixed it into the asthma spray and shook it to mix the two thoroughly. Then he asked Abdullah to return the asthma spray with the drug to the pharmacy. The pharmacy looked at the well-packaged asthma spray and did not suspect anything. Everything was just as Arthur expected. Shuha really asked the bodyguard to buy asthma spray. Hey, Asmasol asthma spray, give me a few boxes. The bodyguard was a frequent customer of the pharmacy and often bought medicine for Shuha. There are not many boxes left, only these few bottles. A big customer took away all the stock, and I left these bottles for you, the pharmacy employee said with a smile. Thank you. Wow, imported products are so expensive, and there are still people who buy so many goods. Rich people. The bodyguard shook his head and sighed that there were too many rich people. Just such a small bottle costs $30, and ordinary people definitely can't afford it. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 474. Every move of the bodyguard was seen by Abdullah, who reported the situation to Arthur. I'm going to take action at night, Arthur and John said. The death squads will also arrive tomorrow, and we will just meet them. Arthur was so confident in himself that he didn't even consider the possibility of the plan failing. He thought about all the possible accidents. In order to avoid the rat calling for help, he also added some special paralyzing agent to the spray. This drug can worsen allergic reactions, especially in people with asthma, and can cause muscle weakness for a short period of time. This kind of allergy can also cause edema in the larynx and airway, causing the airway to spasm, secreting a large amount of inflammatory secretions, and eventually leading to severe hypoxia. Coupled with Shuha's high blood pressure, it can lead to severe arrhythmia. Double buff stacking makes it difficult for Shuha to survive. John understood Arthur's plan and gave a thumbs up with both hands. Haha, fortunately, we are comparing force value. You are an expert in conspiracy and assassination. Arthur just smiled and said nothing. The biggest difference between the lone wolf killer and the mainland hotel killer is that the lone wolf killer is alone. Without the cooperation of his teammates, he can only try his best to kill people. In contrast, mainland hotel killers mostly cooperate in groups and use equipment to crush and force them. Okay, John. Let's take action. Arthur looked at his watch. In the early morning, except for some of Shuha's bodyguards patrolling the yard, most of them went back to the house to rest. The air outlet of the central air conditioner in Shuha house is on the side of the exterior wall. John and Arthur were dressed in black and came directly to the air vent under the cover of night. Arthur took out a can of something from his tactical backpack and handed it to John. Put this in the air vent. John picked up the jar and looked at it. What is this? Arthur whispered, Humulus pollen. Humulus pollen is a pollen that can easily cause allergic symptoms, so Arthur added some other pollen to aggravate the allergy. John put on a mask, opened the can and spread the pollen directly at the air vent. The pollen quietly entered the Shuha mansion with the airflow. In the bedroom of the mansion, Shuha was sitting boredly on the sofa, watching the horror movie Death is Coming from the Beautiful Country. Watching the supporting characters in the horror movie die in strange ways, Shuha unknowingly became involved in it and suddenly shuddered. You should know that August and September in Baran are hot months, so Shuha took the remote control and raised the temperature a little. I wonder if Alex will survive in the end. Shuha shrank his neck, buried himself in the sofa, and muttered softly. He felt that there was death around him, and he also hoped that the hero could survive. Ahem. Shuha coughed, but didn't pay attention. Instead, he picked up the water glass next to him and drank some water to moisten his throat. Cough cough, cough cough, damn asthma. The coughing got worse and worse, and his face turned red from suppressing it. He took the asthma spray he just bought today and sprayed it twice. What confused him was that the smell was completely different from before. He took the spray and looked at the brand on it, Asthmasol. Shuha suddenly felt that his tongue was a little numb, it was a little difficult to speak, and his saliva began to flow down involuntarily. The increasingly severe numbness extended to his arms, and he felt something was wrong, but by this time it was already too late. The rapid edema in his throat compressed his trachea and made him unable to breathe. He fell down on the carpet and tried his best to raise his hand and pat the carpet, but the numbness made him unable to do anything. The arm was raised slightly and landed on the carpet with a puff. Sound, but the sound of the movie blocked the slight sound. Het. Shuha's face turned red from suppressing it, his eyes began to become bloodshot, and he was barely surviving on a trace of oxygen. He couldn't lift any strength in his hands and feet, and even if he wanted to insert his fingers into his throat, he couldn't do such a small movement. It only takes 2 minutes for ordinary people to suffocate, but this painful process lasted more than 10 minutes for Shuha. He tried his best but could not move an inch, and stopped breathing in excruciating pain. When he was dying, he was thinking of Li Qing and the Chinese people he killed in Java. It turned out that, there is really such a thing as retribution in the world. At this time, the movie is also coming to an end. In the end, the male protagonist did not survive as Shuiche hoped, and died a tragic death. Shuha's body was not discovered until after dawn, and it was already stiff. By this time, John, Arthur, and Abdullah had already left the hotel and arrived at a house in the northwest suburb of Bog. "Hey, Barney, long time no see." Arthur dropped his luggage and looked at Barney Ross walking from a distance. Barney was a strong man, wearing a camouflage uniform and walking towards John and others with a smile. John saw that Barney's figure was only slightly smaller than Zhang Dongxiu, but compared with ordinary people, he could be called burly. "Arthur, it's been a long time. I asked you why you didn't agree to my invitation. It turns out you joined the New World." Arthur smiled and hugged Barney. "Haha, don't tell me, I was a little excited when you invited me. I already thought of a nickname, it's called Christmas." Arthur joked, making Barney laugh. "How can anyone be nicknamed Christmas? Come, let me introduce you, this is my friend John Wick." Arthur spread his hands and introduced John next to him. "I know, John Wick, the Night Devil. New World is really powerful, it can pull you two in at the same time." Barney sighed as he looked at the two top killers in front of him. These two are the ones he covets. If he can get one of them, the strength of his suicide squad will soar. New World has these two, and its status in the killer circle will rise a lot. "Okay, guys, come here. Let's get to know new friends." Barney turned his head and greeted several burly men in camouflage uniforms. They are Sniper Gunnar, Demolitionist Thor, Weapons Expert Hire, Intelligence Collector Tur. It has to be said that the configuration of the Suicide Squad is very powerful, covering almost all fields: guns, bombs, driving, intelligence collection, etc. No wonder it can become a mercenary organization in the industry. The group did not start work immediately, but held a sumptuous dinner to let people from both sides get familiar with each other. After all, this mission is not trivial, and if you are not careful, the whole army will be wiped out. So initial trust still needs to be established, but men's friendship is simple, sometimes even just a drink. After a drink, both sides began to get familiar with each other, but there were also sequelae, which was a splitting headache the next day. When Arthur went downstairs with his head covered, he saw Barney sitting downstairs, looking at him teasingly. "Haha, come on Arthur, we need to share information. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all." Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 475. Arthur then sat on the sofa opposite Barney, lowered his head and rubbed his head. "Just tell me, what did you find?" "You have better information than me," Arthur said with a smile. As the top mercenary team of the beautiful national volleyball team, Barney's sources of information are wider and more detailed than Arthur's. Barney chuckled and didn't refute, just handed a thin piece of paper to Arthur. Arthur looked at the few words on the paper. 2 days after Samu, he came to Sarah to inspect the army. He was accompanied by nearly 50 bodyguards and 200 guards. He passed. Arthur glanced at Barney in surprise. "Do you have informants within them?" "It is impossible for insiders to obtain such confidential information, and there are even ways to do so." "Haha, years of war have made some people dissatisfied. Baron's army is not monolithic." Barney crossed his legs and smoked a cigar. In fact, from the beginning of receiving this task, Barney began to ask middlemen to contact informants to inquire about the situation. Barney's purpose in taking this mission is not only because of New World's wealth, he also wants to once again increase the popularity of the Suicide Squad through this mission. After all, there is competition among mercenary organizations, and the rules of big fish eating small fish are the same everywhere. Arthur frowned and looked at the route, and then compared the map. Samu's route has been studied. These places are not easy to ambush. Samu has been assassinated not once or twice, and his bodyguard group is not just a decoration. He must have studied the route and tried to choose some safe places. "But, they can't get around this place," Barney said, pointing to a small dot on the map. "Moor Valley," Arthur murmured. "Yes, the Moor Valley is a place they must pass through. No matter which way they go, they cannot avoid this point," Barney said confidently. After getting the news, he carefully studied the route map all night, and also found local people to learn about the surrounding geography, and finally found the ambush point. Arthur nodded. "Let's go take a look together today. Only after seeing it on the spot can they determine whether it can be used in an ambush, and there is still some detailed work to be done, such as mine burial points, sniper points, heavy machine gun points. These need to be arranged in advance. Moor Valley is not close to here, and they need to set off immediately." The two of them each called their own personnel and drove 4 off-road vehicles, followed by an arms truck, towards the Moor Valley. Well, John was still a little confused, and the drunkenness from yesterday had not completely passed. "Arthur, what about Moor Valley? We only have one chance this time. Regardless of failure or success, we must evacuate immediately." John was quite obedient and took Li Qing's words to heart. "This is the country of Baron. If we don't evacuate in time, we are likely to be surrounded by a large army. You can imagine the fate of people like you." "Don't worry, John. I'm ready." Arthur raised the phone in his hand. He had already contacted a small plane and was waiting at the nearest airport. As long as they get on the plane within half an hour, Baron won't be able to catch them. The power of the New World did not extend to the Middle East, and this plane was coordinated by the New World ally Kimura. John nodded and began to organize his weapons and equipment. The off-road vehicle drove for about 10 hours before reaching the Moor Valley. Barney looked at the Moor Valley with very little vegetation, his face not very good. "Arthur, this is beyond my expectation. The Moor Valley is mostly yellow sandy land, and the vegetation is mainly low vegetation, which cannot block the presence of himself and others. To be honest, this is not a good choice for an ambush." Arthur took out a map from his pocket and asked, "Are there any ambush locations near here?" Barney shook his head, "This is the best point. The rest is plain. It's easy for the other party to escape." At this time Barney also understood why the other party didn't care much about Moore Valley. John finished checking the firearm in his hand, filled the magazine, and said in a deep voice, "Then do it." Barney and Arthur thought for a moment, then looked at each other and said, "Do it? It's okay if you don't do it. Compared with other points, this place is pretty good. At least there are some bunkers. There are about 250 enemies. According to my estimate, the convoy consists of about 10 troop carriers and more than 10 off-road vehicles or commercial vehicles. But the car in the middle is definitely bulletproof." A group of people took out stones and used them as vehicles and lined them up on the ground. Arthur pointed to the stones in the middle and said, "The length of the convoy has exceeded the length of the valley." Barney touched his chin and said softly. He didn't expect this. The length of the convoy exceeded the length of the valley, which obviously made it more difficult to ambush. "Yes, so you can lay mines in the front, and use cars to block the convoy's back road." Arthur placed a stone at the rear of the convoy and pushed forward to push the following cars into the frame. "Blow up the leading car and blow up the rear car," John asked doubtfully. Arthur nodded and pointed to the truck parked in the distance. "This is also the only way to surround and annihilate everyone on the other side in the valley, so that we can defeat more with less. Otherwise, if a dozen of us fight a tough battle, we will die without knowing how." "Okay, let's do it." Barney clapped his hands and said loudly, "Dell, the truck is yours." Dell patted his chest upon hearing this, indicating that it was okay. The group dispersed, buried mines, looked for sniper positions, and fire coverage points. "Where is the next stop?" Samu said with a little fatigue. The continuous inspections of various provinces made his body a little unbearable, but there was nothing he could do about it. The failure of 2 consecutive wars reduced his prestige in the army a lot, and now there are more and more dissatisfied voices in the army. It was also a helpless move to inspect the army and appease the soldiers, but the effect was generally good. "Mr. President, the next stop is the Sarah garrison, and then there are Bala and Gouda," the entourage reported. "Well." Samu closed his eyes and leaned on the backrest. The vehicle drove towards Sarah province in a bumpy manner, but at some point, a truck was always behind a military vehicle, and no one noticed it. After all, it was the president's motorcade, and no one dared to overtake it. The car bumped, and Samu woke up from his sleep and rubbed his eyes. "Where are we?" "Mr. President, we are almost at the Moore Valley." "You should take a rest," the attendant said respectfully. Samu waved his hand, "The road is too bumpy. I can't sleep. Let Governor Sarah fix it, forget it." Samu suddenly remembered something and stopped talking. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all." Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 476. The head of the guard group sat in the lead car, leaning out of the car window, looking at the Moore Valley getting closer and closer. There was basically yellow sand in front of him, with a few short plants and tumbleweeds occasionally. "Safe. Pass." The head of the guard group started the wireless intercom and said loudly. The Samu convoy slowly entered the Moore Valley, and the light began to dim. "Mr. President, we have arrived at the Moore Valley. Everything is safe," the entourage reported in a low voice. Samu looked at the car in front and nodded, "Got it, let the car in front drive faster, I'm a little hungry, hurry to Sal for lunch." The convoy increased the speed under Samu's order, trying to pass the Moore Valley quickly. Boom! The lead car ran over the mine and was instantly blown into a fireball. The bodyguards and the head of the guard group in the car didn't even hum, and they were directly broken into pieces. Samu was startled when he heard the explosion and stood up. He was often assassinated and realized that he might have been assassinated again. The Moore Valley is a shuttle-shaped valley with narrow front and back and wide in the middle. The car in front has been blown up, and they don't know if there are any mines in front. If the other side has set up a minefield in front, they will definitely not be able to get through. The military-born attendant certainly knows this common sense and immediately ordered, "Withdraw from the valley." But at this time, the military vehicle behind was directly pushed forward by the high-powered truck until the two military vehicles still outside the valley were pushed in. Dell in the car quickly jumped out of the car and pressed the remote bomb starter before the guards could react. There was another roar, and the truck exploded with the military vehicle in front. The soldiers in the military vehicle suffered heavy casualties. Fortunately, those who died did not suffer much pain. The injured were basically ignited by the flames. They jumped out of the car one by one and rolled madly in the sand, trying to extinguish the flames on their bodies. "Action," Barney's voice sounded in the headphones of the Suicide Squad members. The heavy machine gunner directly pushed away the camouflaged weeds in front of him, revealing the heavy machine gun in front of him. Tuesday the gun barrels continuously spit out tongues of fire, like the sickle of the god of death, harvesting the lives of the soldiers of the SAMU Guard. Some soldiers who had not yet gotten off the car were directly killed in the car. Other members of the death squad, under the cover of heavy machine guns, began to attack the guards in an orderly manner. They needed to resolve the battle in the shortest time. "Grenade," Barney shouted, "bang bang." The grenade was fired through the grenade launcher with a few empty sounds in the direction of the soldiers gathering. Several explosions sounded, breaking up the formation that had just gathered on the opposite side. Go go go. But the guards who have been in war for many years are not a mob. Although they were caught off guard by the death squad, the military literacy that was deeply rooted in their bones allowed them to quickly use military vehicles as cover to block the attack of the death squad. "Damn it, let them protect me, hurry up," Samu shouted in panic. The attendant looked at Samu with astonishment. Although he had just become Samu's attendant for a short time, he knew from other people that the president was a soldier, so it was impossible for him to be so panicked. "Don't be nervous, Mr. President. Our soldiers will protect you." The attendant suppressed his doubts and comforted him. Samu calmed down after hearing the voice, and realized that his actions just now were not in line with the behavior of a president. "Ahem, I know, I'm just worried about my soldiers." The battle at this time was much more intense than the death squad had imagined. "Damn, the other side is not a weakling," Barney looked at the team member who was shot beside him and cursed fiercely. He underestimated the difficulty of assassinating Samu and thought it was similar to the last assassination of the president of a small South American country. He didn't expect the soldiers of Baron to be so brave to fight to the death to protect the president. Some soldiers even had their legs blown off, but they still insisted on fighting with guns. Behind a big rock, Arthur looked at the time on his watch. The battle had lasted for more than 10 minutes. Most of the soldiers on the other side had been killed or wounded, but the remaining soldiers fought to the death, apparently waiting for reinforcements. If reinforcements came, not only would the mission not be completed, but their lives would also be lost. "John, let's go." John smiled and nodded, "Quickly resolve the battle, I want to eat the barbecue made by Dongziu." "Me too." John and Arthur smiled at each other, picked up their guns and rushed out, one on the left and one on the right. Barney looked at the two of them blankly. "Damn, are you crazy? Suppress fire, hurry up." In Barney's eyes, John quickly made a tactical roll and came to the damaged vehicle. Using the vehicle as a cover, bang, 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 bang. Rhythmic gunshots sounded. Barney had heard that John Wick's shooting skills were superb, and this time he finally understood why some people call John Wick Babayage. Because the bullets fired by John seemed to have magic, almost every bullet could hit the enemy. Attack. Seeing this, they were not idle either, and followed John to attack the place. The guards were retreating step by step, not because they were not strong in combat, but because the opponent was too strong. The guards did not carry any heavy weapons at all, and their firepower was always suppressed by the heavy machine guns of the Suicide Squad, and the opponent fired grenades like they were free. Even if the guards had grenades, they could not throw them far. In addition, there were sniper rifles on the hillside, calling out names one by one. Even if the American Marines came, they would suffer. "John, be careful," Barney saw someone shooting coldly and quickly reminded him. Bang bang. 2 bullets hit John's chest, and the impact made him step back a few steps. "John," Arthur also shouted worriedly. "Ahem, it hurts." John rubbed his chest in Barney's surprised eyes, looked at his intact suit, raised his eyebrows and said, "Hey, hey, Barney blurted out in surprise. "The secret weapon of the New World," John whispered. Li Qing prepared a set of bulletproof suits for all the Corps members, but John and Gao Jin wore them the most. Others wore suits every day and were not used to them. With John the sharpshooter leading the charge, the bodyguards and guards on the opposite side were not worth mentioning at all, and fell one after another. Especially in front of Samu's car, it was basically corpses piled up, and they stayed with Samu to protect him. The loyalty of the guards moved everyone. "Come out." John got rid of the last bodyguard and shouted loudly with a gun pointed at the car. But the other party still did not respond. "Pa pa pa." John fired several shots at the car glass, but the window only cracked. "Huh? Made in China." Arthur stepped forward and touched the bulletproof glass. "Come out, or I'll blow you to death." The blasting expert raised the bomb in his hand. "Ka!" The car door sounded, and Samu came out with his hands raised. "Don't shoot, don't kill me." Everyone smiled when they saw Samu, and the mission was completed this time. "Samu, the New World says hello to you," John said in a deep voice with a gun against Samu's head, and his finger pressed hard on the trigger. "My name is Meha, I'm not Samu, I'm his stand-in." "Oh. Huh. Ah. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all." Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 477. The attendant sitting in the co-pilot seat finally understood why this president was a little awkward. It turned out that he was a fake. Seeing that everyone's eyes were focused on the fake president, the attendant pursed his lips and quietly took out a pistol from his pocket. He knew that his people would definitely die, but he must not let this fake president live. He knew too much. At this time, John felt indescribable discomfort, a kind of awkward feeling of half pulling shit, pretending halfway, but the person opposite was not himself. "I don't." John was about to speak when he saw the attendant take out a gun and point it at Meha's head. But John was one step faster than him, and a gunshot hit the attendant's eyebrows. "It seems that you are really not." John looked at the attendant's actions and immediately judged that the person in front of him might not be Samu. "Go, hurry up." Arthur knew that the situation was very serious, and it was much later than expected. "Take him with you." Arthur thought more thoroughly. This mission failed, but Meha, as Samu's substitute, knew some secrets of the Baron Kingdom. If Meha was brought to Gotham, this mission would not be a complete failure. This time, the Suicide Squad also suffered losses, with 2 people killed directly and others more or less injured. Barney burned the bodies of his 2 teammates with great pain, but there was no way he could take them away now. The group did not dare to delay and got in the car directly, heading towards the nearest airport. "Mr. President, your convoy was attacked in the Moor Valley." The presidential assistant hurried to the Selam Palace, where Samu's office was. Samu didn't look up and was still serious, looking at the newspaper about the international situation in his hand, as if the attack had nothing to do with him. After about 5 minutes, Samu looked up and took off his glasses after reading a piece of news. Looking at the assistant who was standing respectfully in front of him, he said, "Have you found the murderer? Rebels? Or the Socialist Party?" The assistant seemed to feel the pressure from Samu, and said cautiously, "Mr. President, not yet. But we have some clues, and I believe we will find those people soon." Samu didn't say anything. He knew that this matter would be very troublesome whether it was done by the rebels or his own system. "Are you sure they are all dead?" Samu knocked on the table. "From the bodies at the scene, it seems that the whereabouts of the substitute Meha has not been found, but there are 2 more burnt corpses. These 2 burnt corpses should be the bodies of the attackers." Samu frowned. "Whether Meha is dead or alive, we must find him. The main thing is that his substitute Meha knows too many confidential events. Meha is out of his control, and he is worried." Samu waved away the assistant and sat in a large and comfortable office chair. He has many substitutes, so he doesn't care if 1 or 2 die. On the contrary, Shuha's death 2 days ago made him a little sad, not only because the 2 of them had a good relationship, but also because Shuha brought him a lot of news about the United States. He also asked his men to hold a grand funeral for Shuha, which was worthy of the assets that Shuha gave him. Several off-road vehicles were driving fast on the road covered with yellow sand. The people in the car were the Suicide Squad and John and others. Arthur looked at his watch. It was more than 10 minutes late. He didn't know if the plane was still there. He just called and couldn't contact the captain. "Hurry up, John, we don't have time," Arthur urged softly. John nodded, stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, and drove the off-road vehicle like his Ford Mustang. The off-road vehicle roared and passed one vehicle after another. It arrived at the nearest Kudat airport in 10 minutes. Kudat airport is a small airport. Because it is too close to Matu airport, the passenger flow is relatively small, and only small planes landed. What Arthur was worried about finally happened. Soldiers and police were checking vehicles ahead. "Damn it," Barney cursed angrily. Looking at the soldiers with guns and live ammunition, they knew they couldn't force their way through this time. Otherwise, they would be surrounded and annihilated here. Go back." Arthur took out the map and looked at it. They could only escape from Baron as close to the border as possible. Barney said something on the intercom, and several off-road vehicles turned around and returned to the original route at the same time. But this abnormal behavior attracted the attention of the army ahead, and the leading officer immediately shouted, "Chase, catch up with the off-road vehicles ahead." The presidential convoy was attacked in Sera province, and they, the garrison, were not to blame. Now they would rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let one go. As long as there is an abnormality, they will go forward to check, no matter what the situation is with the off-road vehicles ahead, they will stop them first. The soldiers quickly climbed into the car and chased the off-road vehicle in the distance. The leading officer also called for car support and reported the whereabouts of the off-road vehicle to other teams, asking them to set up defenses in front. "Prepare for battle." Barney looked at the military vehicle chasing closely behind him and said in a deep voice on the intercom. Except for the driver, everyone picked up the assault rifles beside them and loaded them. Bang bang. The Sera garrison saw that the other side still refused to stop after his warning, and no longer hesitated. He directly raised his gun and started shooting at the off-road vehicle in front. The death squad was not a pushover either. They directly broke the rear window glass with a few shots and shot at the driver's seat, car tires, and other parts. In terms of shooting accuracy, the death squad is much better than the Sera garrison. After all, these things are fed by bullets. The death squad only fired a few shots and blew up the tires of the military vehicle behind. The high-speed military vehicle tilted instantly, throwing out several soldiers directly, and the car slowly stopped. Haha. Seeing the military vehicle stop, The death squad members in the car laughed and high-fived each other. But Barney, Arthur, and others in the front car couldn't laugh. Damn, there are troops setting up defenses ahead, seeing someone pull a row of car-blocking spikes in front. Stop the car, get off and fight. Arthur made a prompt decision. He knew that the off-road vehicle was their only means of transportation. If the off-road vehicle had a problem, they would all die in Barren. The group quickly stopped the car, used the off-road vehicle as a cover, and began to shoot at the opposite side. What made them happy was that there were not many people on the opposite side, just a small team of more than a dozen people, and the main force might still be on the way. Grenade. Barney took the grenade launcher and shot at the place where the people on the opposite side gathered. There was a sound of air blast, followed by continuous explosions. The explosion of the grenade directly detonated the fuel tank of the military vehicle parked on the roadside. For a while, there were wailings everywhere on the opposite side. Go go go. The Suicide Squad used the V-shaped attack commonly used by the US Marine Corps. The rhythmic 3-round burst of gunfire rang out, quickly harvesting the lives of the enemy. The combat effectiveness of the Sarah garrison was obviously incomparable to that of the Republican Guard. It can be said that it collapsed at the first touch. In fact, it's not their fault. It's only a few $100s a month. Why risk your life? The Suicide Squad quickly pulled the nails to block the car and jumped into the car. They didn't have time to pay attention to those deserters. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 478. John, this must be told to the boss, Arthur said in a deep voice while sitting in the speeding car. The situation at this time is very serious. If they are surrounded by a large army, they will surely die. Now even the only escape route is blocked, and they are like a turtle in a jar. Well, I agree. John also knew that there was a high possibility of failure of this mission. The only retreat route was blocked this time, and now they could only rely on the boss. Arthur quickly called the boss Li Qing. Li Qing, who was a little sleepy, picked up the phone. Arthur? How is it? Have you boarded the plane? Li Qing stood up and leaned on the backrest of the bed. He looked at his watch and calculated the time. Arthur should be on the plane. Boss, the mission failed. Things are beyond our expectations. The other party reacted very quickly. We can't get into the airport, and we are exposed. The other party is chasing us. Arthur's slightly hoarse voice came out from the microphone. Li Qing frowned when he heard this. He had thought about the mission failure, but he didn't expect that the retreat route he had prepared for them would not be used. Sure enough, plans cannot keep up with changes. He picked up the map of Barren from the bedside table. Arthur, where are you now? Boss, northeast of Matu City in Arsara province. Li Qing quickly found Matu City on the map. Matu City was not in a good location. No matter which way he went, he had to pass through other provinces. Arthur, you continue to go northeast, cross the Lisu province and go directly to Persia. I will send someone to Persia to pick you up. This is the shortest route out of the country, and other routes are longer. The longer Arthur and his team stay in Barren, the less safe it is. The conflict between Persia and Barren is huge. As long as they enter Persia, Arthur and others will be safe. Okay, boss. Arthur hung up the phone. But when Li Qing heard the busy tone on the phone, he couldn't let go of the two generals in his heart, and paced in the bedroom for a while. He opened a cabinet, which was filled with 3 rows of mobile phones. Each mobile phone had a different number, and Li Qing took out a mobile phone with the number 404. He turned on the phone and dialed the first number. The phone rang once, and the other party answered the phone. Apparently, someone had been waiting in front of the phone. Barren country, 2 cities, Bag and Matu, 4 packages, Li Qing said and hung up the phone. turned off the phone again and put the phone in the cabinet. Then he called Winston and asked him to collect all the information about the Samu family and give it to him after dawn. Until 7 o'clock in the morning, Winston came to the villa panting. "Boss, this is the information of the Samu family." Winston handed the materials in his hand to Li Cheng. Li Cheng nodded and kept looking through the materials. Samu had 4 wives, 3 sons, 3 daughters, 2 grandsons, and 2 granddaughters. Among them, the 2 sons he valued the most were Wu Dai and Kusai, especially the eldest son Wu Dai, who was very favored by Samu. Li Cheng quickly read all the information about Wu Dai. From the information, he learned that this person was lustful and cruel, liked to abuse women and raise wild animals. Especially after he became disabled due to a stroke, he lost his status as an heir and let himself go, revealing his true nature. He never missed a woman he valued. He even attended a subordinate's wedding once. He saw that the bride was beautiful at the wedding. After attending the wedding ceremony, he directly defiled the bride, and each woman was at most 3 times. It was okay for women who were abandoned after being raped 3 times. If he happened to be in a bad mood, he would feed these women to lions. Yes, feed them while they were alive. Winston didn't know why Li Cheng asked him to collect information about Samu, but he knew it must be very important. "Boss, this person is now on vacation in Hawaii, the beautiful country," Winston whispered. Li Cheng's eyes condensed when he heard this, and he grinned. "Okay, just in time. Dongziu, call someone. We'll go to Hawaii right away. If John and Arthur have an accident in Barren, he will skin Wu Dai alive and record a video to send to Samu." Seeing Li Cheng's cold smile, Winston shuddered immediately. It seems that Wu Dai is going to be unlucky. This time, Li Cheng did not ask Zhang Dongziu to book a plane ticket, but used his own private plane for the first time. Of course, the passenger capacity of a private plane is limited, and it can only carry 10 to 20 people at most. In addition to the backbone, the crew members will take the plane with him. Other members of the New World still arrived a step later by passenger plane. The plane flew in the sky for a full 13 hours before arriving at the destination, Honolulu Airport. "Wow, this is Hawaii." Crow took off his hat and fanned himself. "The weather in Hawaii is still quite hot. Let's go." Li Cheng got off the plane first. This time he didn't come for a vacation. Now John and Arthur are still on the run, and they have no time to waste. In front of the Selam Palace in Bog City, people were constantly coming and going. This was the administrative center of Barren State. There were mostly armed guards on alert around, their eyes fixed on the pedestrians passing by. Suddenly, a pickup truck caught their attention. They saw the pickup truck coming quickly without slowing down. The guards were alert, holding their guns and aiming. "Stop! Stop!" The pickup truck kept rushing towards the Selam Palace, and then another car appeared from behind. Since most people were distracted by the pickup truck and not paying attention to the other vehicle, many of the guardsmen were knocked out. The 2 cars crashed into the steel gate of Selam Palace one after the other, followed by a violent explosion. Killed many guards. At the same time, the military camp and police headquarters in Batu were also attacked by car bombs, causing heavy casualties to soldiers and police. "Asshole," Samu smashed his beloved coffee cup. "Suicide attack. Terrorist attack. Are we a beautiful country? Has any organization come forward to claim it?" He still feels frightened when he thinks about it now. After all, this suicide attack was very close to him. The assistant shook his head and said, "Mr. President, no organization has claimed it yet." "Check, let those people in the polar regions check, who did it? We spend so much money every year, and today we actually received a terrorist attack. It is simply the most ridiculous thing in the world." Samu himself has several terrorist organizations under his command, specifically designed to cause trouble for the beautiful country or other countries. He did not expect that one day the balloon country would also receive a terrorist attack. The terrorist attack instantly diverted Samu's attention. In his eyes, the terrorist attack was more important than the assassination. After all, 4 consecutive terrorist attacks directly hit him in the face and made him famous internationally. And this is also Li Qing's purpose. In this case, the pressure on John, Arthur, and others will be much less. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 479. Hawaii, Wuji Luxury Villa. Under the umbrella, Wuji was lying on a lounge chair next to the swimming pool. There were various iced fruits on the small round table next to him. What was shocking was that there was a blonde woman kneeling on the ground beneath his feet. The woman was wearing a revealing bikini, and Wu Xie's feet were placed across her back. Although her knees were bruised and purple, she still tried her best not to make a sound. The vigilant bodyguards around seemed to have long been accustomed to this kind of scene. Their eyes under their sunglasses showed the slightest pity for the blonde beauty, but there was nothing they could do. Wu Gang was very cruel. Once, a bodyguard took one look at his woman and was fed to a lion. Damn Kusai, if I hadn't had a stroke and lost this leg, he wouldn't be where he is today. Wu Ji angrily threw down the Baron's Times in his hand, which had just reported that his younger brother Kusai had been entrusted with important tasks and became a worthy heir. Damn it, damn it. Wu Ji kicked the woman's head hard until the woman was dying. Throw her down and feed David. David is the adult African lion he raised. Now he weighs more than 230 kilograms, which is almost the same as Maluka, the boss of the Bad Boys League, but he cannot compare with him in terms of combat effectiveness. Okay, Mr. Wuju. The bodyguard directly dragged the unconscious blonde beauty down. I heard that Beige and Matu suffered a terrorist attack. It would be great if my lovely brother was killed. As the eldest son, he should be the heir, but unexpectedly, due to his involvement in the assassination of his brother-in-law and his stroke, he completely lost his qualifications to control the Baron Kingdom. During this period of time, he stayed away from the Baron Kingdom to prevent being assassinated by his brother, although this possibility was very low. Come here, help me find the blonde girl, Wu Ji said loudly. The assistant walked up to Wu Ji with a confused look on his face. Sir, this is already the 5th one. If you look for me again, I'm afraid things will get bigger and the Hawaii police will notice us. The assistants searched for beauties for the gangsters, most of whom lived alone and often did not interact with their families, so they did not attract the attention of the police for the time being. But there are too many people, and there is no guarantee that there will be no problems. Forget it, forget it. Brown-haired and red-haired ones are fine too. Wu Shi waved his hand impatiently. Because their father Samu likes blonde beauties, both Wu Yi and Kusai prefer golden cats under the influence, so they naturally focus on this hair color when looking for toys. The assistant didn't dare to say anything else. He knew that if he spoke any more, he would be fed to the lions by the gangsters. After the assistant went down, Wu Ji shook the bell in his hand, and the waiter in the distance came over quickly. Wu Ji doesn't like people getting too close to him. The risk factor is too high. Who knows if the waiter will put a black gun behind his back. Liquor. Wu Ji didn't want to say another word. The waiter quickly picked up the wine on the table, poured half a glass for Wu Yao, and then added 2 more ice cubes. Wu Ji drank the wine in one gulp and closed his eyes happily. Brother, Wu Ji's villa is just ahead. Gao Jin pointed to a luxurious villa and said. Li Qing picked up the telescope in his hand. There were many bodyguards on the rooftop of the villa, guarding him back and forth. It was obvious that he was heavily guarded. Haha, this kid is very afraid of death. Li Qing smiled contemptuously, Get ready to take action. Normally, things happen at night in the New World, but now the situation is serious and time waits for no one. If one more second is wasted, John and the others will be in more danger. Okay, big brother. Gao Jin immediately responded and waved his men to start taking action. The Hawaii police have taken care of it, and they have their endorsement even if the operation is carried out in broad daylight. What's more, the beautiful country's government has long been dissatisfied with Baron Samu, and wants to beat him over this matter. Li Qing took action and saved them the trouble. The people who came to Hawaii this time were all New World elites, and even the killers from the New World Continental Hotel were involved. They have deployed control at various sniper points, aiming at their own targets, just waiting for Li Qing's order. Action! The moment he finished speaking, the gunfire of the snipers rang out, and blood splattered on the heads of the bodyguards in the villa. Bang, bang. The gunshots sounded almost in no particular order. When Wu Ji, who was lying on the couch, reacted, the bodyguards who had been on guard not far away had fallen to the ground, with holes as big as bowls on their heads. Enemy attack, Wu Ji turned over and fell directly to the ground. He knew there must be snipers around him, so he tried his best to lower his body and shouted for help. At this time, the bodyguards who were in the villa rushed out and dragged Wu Ji directly back to the villa. During this period, 3 more bodyguards were shot dead. Wu Ji, who entered the villa, breathed a sigh of relief temporarily. Quick, call the police. Let the police from the beautiful country come to support. The bodyguard immediately dialed 911 and turned on the speakerphone. Hey, this is Villa 5, 32nd Street, Hawaii. We are under attack. Hey, I can't hear you clearly, please say it again. Here. Did you learn your English in India? Please say that again. Wu Ji finally couldn't help but snatched the phone. You. We are asking for help, not chatting with you. Doo-doo. The other party hung up the phone directly, leaving Wu Bao in a daze. Damn it, if this is the Baron police, I will feed him to the lions. Bastard. Keep fighting. Wu Xie carefully looked outside the door. It was quiet now and there was no sound, but he felt even more uneasy. Mr. Wu Ji, when I heard it was Villa number 5, I immediately hung up the phone, the bodyguard said with an ugly expression. Asshole, Wu Ji also realized that something was wrong, and the person who could influence the police force in the beautiful country would not be too small. Damn old man, he thought it was his father Samu who had offended some big boss in the beautiful country. Without hesitation, he directly picked up the satellite phone and dialed his father's number. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. Wu Ji? Why are you calling me at this time? The time difference between Hawaii and Bog is 13 hours, and Samu had just fallen asleep when Wu Ji called. Father, I was attacked by unknown persons in Hawaii. Now the police calls can't be reached. Hearing the panicked voice of his eldest son, Samu frowned and sat up. Are you saying there was no response from the American police? He was more worried about the beautiful country's attitude than his son's life. There must be a beautiful Buddha bowl watching over Wu Ji. Now that Wu Ji was attacked, the other party didn't react at all. This attitude is more intriguing. Well, don't worry. I'll call the beautiful country right now. You hide in the villa and don't come out for the time being, Samu said in a deep voice. Okay, tell them to come quickly, father. Wu Yi hung up the phone. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 480. John and his team were traveling on a dirt road in the countryside. Barney hijacked a local as a guide. There were military checkpoints on the highway at any time, so they could not go far on the highway. The exit is not far ahead, and there is a tunnel a few kilometers away from the exit. Locals use that tunnel to do business and smuggle small items. The contact person, Abdullah, translated the guide's words. John nodded. They also saw the exit, which was heavily guarded. It seemed that they had noticed the route of their people. Let's go directly to the tunnel. The team did not stop at the exit, but went directly north. 10 minutes later, Arthur looked at the tunnel entrance that was completely blocked, and someone poured cement into the tunnel entrance. Damn it, ask him if there are other smuggling ports around. Abdullah shook his head with an ugly face. This is the only smuggling port within a radius of hundreds of miles. Everyone in the car fell silent. They all knew that the success rate of rushing through the checkpoint was very low. Besides, the ammunition has been almost exhausted along the way, and the feasibility of rushing through the checkpoint with only the weapons at hand is zero. Let's find a hidden place to stop and rest first. The brothers are very tired, Arthur said in a solemn voice with a blank expression. More than 10 hours of long-distance travel, coupled with the occasional blocking battles, made everyone's spirit very tense. If they don't rest, I'm afraid there will be big problems, especially those members of the suicide squad, who basically suffer from traumatic emergency syndrome. Once they know that they have no hope of survival, they will madly slaughter local civilians to bury them. Barney, tell the brothers of the suicide squad that the boss will definitely save us. Arthur turned his head and said to Barney, who was sitting in the back seat with his head down. At this time, only the leader of the suicide squad can stabilize these people. Arthur, can your boss really save us? You know, this is... Barney didn't say anything else. It was hard for him to believe that the boss of the New World could influence the head of a country. In fact, at the moment when the mission failed, he had already made plans to die. This group of people live and die on the battlefield. They don't trust anyone except the guns in their hands. Don't worry, Barney, the boss can do anything. John's eyes were firm when he said this. Barney glanced at him. It was hard to imagine that Night Devil could trust someone so much. Okay, I promise they won't have any problems, Barney said with a slightly hoarse voice. Let's go, find a hidden place, rest, and eat. The convoy quickly drove towards a local village. Open the door, Gao Jin hurriedly ordered his younger brother. Bang bang. The younger brother fired 2 bursts at the door lock with a large caliber shotgun. The door of the villa was suddenly knocked open, and the New World elite team quickly advanced in an offensive formation. In fact, they didn't need to be very cautious for this level of attack. After all, the sniper had eliminated most of the bodyguards. But they all wanted to perform well in front of the big boss Li Qing, and for a while they were like anti-terrorism, and Gao Jin rolled his eyes. Damn, none of them had ever trained so formally. At this time in the villa, Wu Dai had learned from the surveillance in the basement that the other side had attacked. WTF, who is the other side? Looking at the black uniforms and equipment comparable to the American Marines, if most of the people on the other side had black hair, he almost thought it was the American Faberle who came to arrest him. The bodyguards behind him were also confused. They didn't know that there was such a mobile team in Hawaii. I'm afraid only the garrison in Hawaii can fight these people. Quick, stop them, they're attacking. Wu Dai looked at the other side in the surveillance and was heading towards the basement. The basement of the villa has 2 floors. The first floor is used for entertainment, with rooms of various styles, sex toys, and rooms for torturing people. The second floor is used to raise Wu Dai's beasts, but now only Wu Dai's favorite lion and Black Panther are here, and the others are in the palace of Baron. Bang bang, fierce gunshots rang out at the door of the basement. Wu Dai's bodyguards blocked the mobile team at the door with the advantage of terrain. Tear gas, Gao Jin shouted loudly. Several of his brothers smashed the wooden door directly, and several tear gas rolled down the stairs. The gas continued to spread, and the remaining bodyguards were fumigated by the gas and coughed violently. Wu Dai and others had no choice but to go down one more floor, trying to delay time until Samu sent someone to rescue them. The New World mobile team put on gas masks and marched towards the basement in an orderly manner. Crow followed Zhang Dongzia wearing a gas mask and came to the first basement. Xiu'er, this kid plays more colorfully than me. There are several toys in it that I have never seen. Crow's voice was a little muffled with a gas mask. He picked up the wolf club hanging on the wall and shook it. It's a tool, man, at first glance. Zhang Dongzia was very upset. He didn't want to talk to Crow. Every time Crow would talk about something with color. Strike, time was urgent, and Zhang Dongzia directly ordered a strong attack on the second floor of the basement. The remaining bodyguards could not resist the attack of the mobile team at all and fell to the ground in an instant. Don't come over here, Wu Dai hid behind the lion David. He raised this lion since he was a child, and he also received special training from the animal trainer, and he also knew how to protect Wu Dai. The mobile team couldn't open fire either. After all, the boss wanted Wu Dai alive, and if he was killed, it would definitely be bad. Roar the lion threatened with bared teeth, and both sides were in a stalemate for a while. What's going on? Crow and Zhang Dongzia also came down at this time, and were shocked to see such a large lion standing there. Lion, Crow looked at the lion in surprise. Zhang Dongzia suddenly saw such a big lion, and his eyes twitched. Although he had guns on his side, he could still change a few lions if he really wanted to. It's a bit dangerous, I still won't let you come down, Crow said flatteringly, and then he was going upstairs to find Li Cheng. Huh? What's dangerous? Why don't you let me come down? Li Cheng walked downstairs with a cigarette in his hand. Hey, brother, guess what we found downstairs? Lion, big lion, Crow said with a treasure. At this time, Li Cheng also saw the lion standing in front of Wu Dai with bared teeth. But he saw it more clearly than others. In the corner of the lion cage, there lay a half-eaten female corpse, with beautiful golden hair scattered around the lion cage. Li Cheng saw this scene, and a trace of hostility flashed in his eyes. Who are you? What's the feud between us? Wu Dai looked at the young man at the door and said. Haha, feud. I don't have a feud with you, but I have a feud with your father, so I want to borrow you, Li Cheng said frivolously, but his eyes were getting colder and colder. He stared straight at the lion, revealing his white teeth. The lion saw Li Cheng's provocation and seemed to be enraged. The mane on his neck became more fluffy, and he roared and pounced on Li Cheng. David, sit, Wu Dai was horrified. If the lion really rushed out, he would be completely exposed to the gun. If he bit the other side, he would not end up well, and according to the other side, he didn't want to take his life at all. But the lion was a ferocious beast after all, and was angered by Li Cheng, so it would not listen to him and ran straight towards Li Cheng.